Hi, I'm Kevin Rutherford. Welcome to RG's Talent Tips. Today I'm going to show you how leaders should have tactful conversations. So let's dive right in. I don't believe it comes as any great surprise that most leaders spend the overwhelming majority of their time every day in some type of an interpersonal situation. I also don't believe it comes as a great shock that a large number of organizational problems occur as a result of poor communications. In fact, according to the research, as much as 69% of managers are not comfortable communicating with their employees in general. It is precisely this paradox that underscores the need for leaders to focus on becoming great communicators. Communication is a core leadership function, and leaders at all levels need to know a whole lot more than just the mechanics of sending and receiving information. In our research, we found that harnessing the ability to communicate with tact is one of the most important skills a leader can have. Now, tact is the ability to manage difficult circumstances or people. Tact requires ingenuity and the ability to know what will make a person feel better after they talk to you. It's not just the words, but how you say and deliver them. Now, that may sound a little bit like a difficult challenge, but the reality is this. Today I'm going to show you how you can take a framework that I've created that will make it easier for you to communicate tactfully. It's the same framework that we teach as part of our leadership training, Tactful Communication for Leaders. To make it easy to remember, we use the acronym Tactful. Each letter in Tactful stands for one of 7 strategies or techniques that will help you say the right thing in any conversation. So let's get started. So I'm going to pull this over real quick, and what you see here is the first T. Think before you speak. Think before you speak. The best way to prevent any kind of verbal blunder is not to say it in the first place. You want to avoid a tactless statement by thinking about what you want to say and how you want to say it before you actually say it. Now, I know that's difficult to do because many quick-tongued people don't realize the negative impact that their sharp words can have on others. Therefore, rather than just shooting from the lips, so to speak, and sharing your brutal honesty, take a deep breath and ask yourself a few questions. How would I feel if somebody said this to me? What do I want my words to accomplish? Are my expectations reasonable? And then lastly, are my comments hurtful or helpful? In many instances, if you take a moment to put yourself in the other person's shoes, you can avoid saying something tactless. Use your own feelings as a yardstick. If you feel even mildly offended by what you're going to say, then others probably will be too. In this case, don't say anything until you can at least rephrase the comment in a more thoughtful way. The next letter, A, in the word tactful stands for apologize when you screw up. In essence, when you make a mistake, okay? So here's an example. Let's say Mary is introduced to a coworker's spouse, and she blurts out, "I thought your husband was so much younger." After noticing the couple's embarrassed glances and maybe some thin smiles, Mary realizes she had made a very tactless comment. Now, to make this right, she quickly apologizes and then changes the subject. Now, everyone makes a verbal blunder from time to time. I know I've done it. But the trick is to recognize that you've put your foot in your mouth and then take it out immediately. Tuning in to the other person's verbal and nonverbal reactions will tell you if an apology is necessary. So, if you do say the wrong thing, here's some suggestions. Apologize immediately. Acknowledge your mistake. Avoid elaborate excuses because, you know what, you're probably just going to dig yourself into a deeper hole. And repeat your apology with a touch of humility, and then change the topic to an upbeat subject. Mary could minimize the damage from her rude comment by saying something like this. "I'm so sorry, Sharon. It's just the way that you talk about your youthful husband. I just assumed that he was barely out of his 20s and not such a distinguished gentleman. By the way, I understand you two just returned from a vacation in Europe, and I'd love to hear all about it. Where exactly did you go? Now, notice how she apologized, made the comment, softened it, and then shifted quickly to a different topic that's all focused on them. Next, C in the word tactful stands for converse, don't compete. And here, I think about this. Sometimes I've heard people, and you say, do you approach conversations as kind of like a competition in which there's a winner and a loser? I've seen that happen a lot. And it could be your aim is to fascinate people with your knowledge or your verbal skills by punching holes in their opinions or arguing over details or correcting their mistakes. Now, if you do adopt an aggressive talk-to-win conversational style, then you'll certainly impress people, but probably not in the way that you'd want. So competitive talkers tend to be tactless and boring because their conversations are seen as a debate rather than a mutual exchange of information, ideas, opinions, and feelings. To communicate tactfully, replace a competitive approach with a less aggressive and more conversational style. Then when you express your views, people will be more inclined to listen without taking offense at an opinion that may differ from their own. Next, T in the word for tactful stands for time your comments. And here you really want to time your comments before you lay your cards on the table, meaning that you want to be sure that the person whom you wish to present your view is ready to listen. So if you spout off too early or even too late, you'll be wasting your breath and your opportunity to get your point across. If at all possible, avoid discussing sensitive or personal topics in these types of situations. In public places or in the company of your friends or coworkers. The minute the other person arrives home from work or first thing in the morning. Your conversational timing will improve if you do three things. Number one, agree upon a time to talk. 2, get right to the point. And 3, do not insist upon an immediate response or agreement. To emphasize your awareness of timing in a conversation, and also to give the other person an opportunity to consider your problem, your feelings, your request, or your point of view carefully, you can say something like this. I'm not asking for a decision or response now, but please think about what I've said. We can talk about that again in a few minutes, or later today, or even tomorrow, whatever's a good time for you. F in the word tactful stands for focus on behavior. Focus on behavior, not on personality. I see this happen all the time. So for example, do you have a difficult friend who aggravates you? Probably all do, right? Some people just love to complain, dwell on the negative, procrastinate, and make excuses. However, when a friend's actions threaten your relationship, you have the right to speak up. The tactful approach is to identify the annoying behavior rather than focus on changing his or her personality. Remember, it's much easier for a person to change a specific, identifiable action than it is to alter his or her entire character. For instance, perhaps you have a perfectionist friend who has the aggravating habit of always correcting grammatical errors or minor details of a story as either you or others speak. Rather than be embarrassed and angered by your friend's compulsive need to correct, because guess what? You're not going to be able to change that. You need to do something about the behavior. The next time your friend contradicts or corrects you, quietly take him or her aside and say something like this. John, can I talk to you privately for a moment? I know that you're just trying to help, but when you constantly correct or contradict me as I speak, it's rude and makes me look foolish. It really makes me feel uncomfortable and embarrasses everyone else too. Would it be too much to ask you to let the little inconsequential details go by instead of calling them out to everyone's attention? If your friend says that he was just trying to help get the facts straight, then you can say something like this. Let me explain it in a different way. When you correct someone else in public, even if you're right, it makes you look like a person who's trying to make yourself look good at some other poor dummy's expense, whether it's mine or someone else's. If you feel compelled to set the record straight, you can show a lot more tact by mentioning to the person in private, I know I would appreciate that. U in the word tactful stands for uncover hidden feelings. Saying difficult things tactfully is more likely if your first attempt to uncover and understand the other person's feelings is done right away. For example, if your worried boss, implies that your decision to take a planned vacation to the Caribbean during hurricane season is irresponsible, don't say something like this. Why don't you mind your own business and stop treating me like I don't know what I'm doing? It's my money and I'll do with it as I want. This typical defense and kind of a childish response does little to inspire your boss's confidence in you. Find out if any other hidden feelings lurk behind the critical comment in this situation. You know what? Perhaps your boss just wants to prevent you from making a costly mistake similar to one that he or she may have made in the past. Whatever it is, once you uncover the real reasons and needs behind critical comments or undesirable behavior, you can tailor a tactful response to address the real issues. And lastly, in the word tactful, we look at L stands for, and this is really important here, listen for feedback. Listen for feedback. Because poor listening skills frequently lead to tactless comments. Criticism or indiscriminate remarks often stem from a desire to dominate the conversation without considering what the other person has to say. However, when you carefully listen for feedback and the reactions to your comments, you will know if your conversational part is either listening to you and if they also understand your viewpoint and feelings. Listening is critical. You'll also learn what issues that he or she is sensitive to and is willing to discuss, and whether or not he or she feels receptive to your opinions. The language and messaging that leaders use is critical and crucial if they want to be effective. So, be tactful all the time. Now, in these 7 strategies, I'm going to suggest that you use them whenever you talk to people, even when you're not in a difficult or stressful conversation. Then when you're faced with a pressured situation, you'll have had some practice with these techniques. As a recap, here are some do's and don'ts to accompany tactful strategies. First, do be direct, courteous, and calm. Don't be rude or pushy. Do spare others your unsolicited advice. Don't be patronizing, superior, or sarcastic. Do acknowledge what works for you may not work for others. Don't make personal attacks or insinuations. Do say your main points first, then offer more details if necessary. Don't expect others to follow your advice or always agree with you. And finally, do listen for those hidden feelings and don't suggest changes that a person cannot easily make. Focus on that behavior. And there you have it. Now you have a framework for having tactful conversations that will really elevate your leadership language and your messaging. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something that you can apply right away. If you did and want more, please subscribe to our channel below and check out our website for even more content, handouts, free tools that will take you from where you are to where you want to be. Until next time.